Gray is an on-call executive general counsel and is also a member of 2 angel investing groups. Given her role as a senior management confidant and advisor, she's tended to rely on bulleted executive-style briefings with her work. Patricia, welcome.
Thank you, Greg.
So what sorts of companies do you tend to work with?
Anywhere from startup to companies with revenues of over $2 billion.
And what would you define as your areas of expertise?
Obviously, I'm a lawyer by training, but I think the more important expertise to bring to the table, especially with early stage companies, is an executive perspective and a business development model that will benefit that company.
And would you say your areas of expertise are more relevant to a nascent startup or a concept that's received, say, 2 or 3 rounds of funding?
Well, I think any company at any stage could certainly benefit from the expertise. The more complex the transaction, the more my expertise comes into play. I've been an executive in 4 industries, so I'm very good at understanding.
Which 4 industries would those be?
Manufacturing, technology, wireless, telecommunications, and healthcare.
And how many years have you been doing this sort of work?
I've been in the legal business for over 30 years and been an executive over 15.
Impressive. So amongst those 45 years of person hours, if you will, how many yous do these executives tend to surround themselves with? Is it usually you and the management team? Are there 1 or 2 of your type of confidants? Help us sort of understand the bigger picture, please.
Okay. I would say the kinds of companies that I'm working with right now would have a board comprised of 2 to 4, maybe 5
Now,
board
is that
members.
an advisory board or a board of directors?
I'm saying a board of directors who would also double as an advisory board. At the early stages, companies need to be able to leverage the talent they have in as many different areas as possible. And of course, each individual is unique. So when you ask me how many advisors of my ilk are there, I would say, well, we're all kind of unique.
Right.
But it's all tailored to exactly what the business needs. And so, And
again, what are they looking for you in particular for? Is it your legal and business knowledge? Is it that you've been there, done that with 45 years of doing this? Is it something else that's certain je ne sais quoi?
It's a combination of both. Legal advice is not worth anything unless it's infused with a business strategy. And anything that young companies starting out going through 2 and 3 rounds of financing is always going to involve financing and a legal issue.
Out of curiosity, is the antithesis true? Is business knowledge without legal expertise valuable?
It's valuable to a point, but it can also get you into a lot of trouble.
Okay. So why do you tend to rely on bulleted executive style briefings?
Well, the most important reason is that that's exactly what investors want. They are assessing not only the business concept, but they're assessing the ability of management to really respond to market changes. So the more succinct and the more right on the message is, the more confidence the investor is going to have in that particular presenter.
But let me push back.
Okay.
If these investors, if these executives are worth their weight in salt, you can't necessarily convince me that they will be happy with a series of bullet points as opposed to a 4 or 5 page long executive summary.
Well, I often think if you can maintain the attention span of the individual writing the 4 or 5 page long summary, that's great. Not everyone is like that. And the most important thing is that you actually do have to do your market research. You have to know your material cold. But on top of that, you need to be able to show that you can prioritize what's important for this business. And that's the kind of manager you're seeking in a company that you're going to be investing in.
So at the end of the day, is there any connection with depth and the length of a memo that you're preparing?
In my view, no. Less is more. I totally believe that. And it shows both knowledge of the industry and also indicates an ability to prioritize what the key issues are to attack in the first instance.
Now, this is a bit of an unfair question because every startup is different, every industry is different, but amongst your 4 to 6 bullets, would you categorize them into different sections? Would one bullet focus on marketing? Would one bullet focus on the industry competitive analysis? Or is it really an amalgamation of the 4 or 5 most important sets of data or analyses that you want to present?
Well, the 3 options you gave me, Greg, I'd go with the last one. But what you're trying to do is to communicate in as few words as possible the most succinct and salient points about your business. The opportunity to be able to be challenged on those points will come in an executive presentation when you have your investors there cross-examining you on what's important.
So how many of these presentations would you say you've done over the years?
Well, I've counseled executives on giving the presentations to investor advisors. And I would say over the years we've gone through well, with the public companies that I've worked with,
Right.
which are in a different scale, obviously it's every quarter because we have to give analyst
Sure, of course,
reports.
right.
And that is very well rehearsed. For the younger stage companies that are preparing to give a presentation in order to raise money, I would say a dozen or so.
You're watching The Language of Business. I'm Greg Stoller, and we're talking with Patricia Gray, an executive and general counsel, a terrific combination. She often relies on the less is more approach when advising top managers. So have you found that anything is ever lost in translation when it comes to assessing the industry and competitive analysis?
Well, as with any form of communication, there's always an opportunity for something to get lost in translation. I think you optimize your chances, though, when you hit the points clearly and succinctly, and then you present a cohesive and coherent presentation and stand up under pressure under cross-examination.
So your executive style bulleted approach, is this a Patricia Gray special or is this a general business trend?
I believe it's a business trend. I've had to learn it myself. I've had to pare down my own tendency to be a lawyer and to draft briefs. I believe it's something that I see more frequently adopted.
What advice would you have for our viewers who are getting into this for the first time, either from a confidant advisory perspective or from the entrepreneur's perspective directly?
From whatever perspective you're coming, understand your material very well, perform all the analysis and the market analysis, the competitive analysis, and then I would also add for certain industries, understand your consumer extremely well and who's going to pay for the product or
Now,
service.
conspicuously absent from your answer was anything having to do with the competition.
Competition is part of it. When I say market analysis, I assume competition is part of it. I see it as one issue.
So what's the difference then between the consumer and his or her competitors?
It's not the consumer and the competitors. I would say understanding the consumers and who's paying for the service. That distinction is actually clearer in certain industries like healthcare, for example.
Sure.
You're not dealing with an individual consumer, you're dealing with a consumer who happens to be a patient, and then an independent agency who is going to make payments, reimburse a hospital, or actually pay for the drug that's being purchased.
What are 2 or 3 of the largest oopses that you've, that's a technical term, by the way. What are 2 or 3 of the largest oopses that you've seen over the years in people who do this really poorly?
Lack of preparedness. Standing up in front of an investor group and not being able to answer the questions and clearly showing that they're not really on top of the material.
And flipping the coin, the 2 or 3 biggest sort of best practices?
Best practices, the inverse of what I said, being very well prepared, understanding your audience extremely well, and being flexible. Really listening, being in the moment and understanding the questions that are being presented at the time and being able to respond to them.
And from a startup's perspective, where do you think you ultimately add the most value? As an attorney or as a confidant?
I think there should be more confidence in the world and fewer attorneys, frankly. But the confidant is really the overall strategic advisor who will blend a whole history of experience and combination of specializations to help an executive.
And do you find that these executives are telling you things that they truly are not telling their staff, even their executive staff, or even dare say their board members?
That's the true sign of
a confidant.
Of
right.
a confidant. And basically, an executive needs to be able to brainstorm, bounce ideas off, and feel free, just like an individual would speak to a priest of sorts.
Sure.
To know that they can share something in confidence and test out ideas and to feel open and free about it.
Sort of like an executive coach type
Absolutely.
approach. Thanks, Patricia. Now that you've watched 2 different approaches to writing the same section of a business plan, let's meet an international entrepreneur weighing the pros and cons of both. Leo Brea from Caracas, Venezuela, next on The Language of Business.